Hello, everyone, again, and welcome to the September 8th District 3 Post 1 Tucker City Council Forum. This will be the last forum that we do for the Tucker City Council election, so I want to thank all of the candidates who have showed up and participated in those. This forum is being broadcast over Twitch. Of course, you'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel later, along with some coverage. And you'll also be able to find all of our elections coverage in Tucker, Clarkston, and Stone Mountain at tuckerobservervotes.com. I am your host, editor, and publisher Dan Wisenhunt. Our candidates that are with us today are Alexis Weaver. Alexis, how are you today?
I'm doing great.
Thank you. And Neil Stubblefield. Neil, how are you today?
Very good. Thanks, Dan.
I wanted to point out that there's another candidate in this race named David Deaton. We have tried in multiple ways to coordinate with him, but unfortunately we have not been able to communicate with him both on the Q&As and on the forums. But if you could find anything for him, I do encourage you to go look up some information about him as well. So I just wanted to let people know we weren't intentionally excluding him. We just couldn't find a way to connect and schedule this with him. But that's okay. We've got two of the three. That's a good thing. The election is going to be November 2nd. The early voting is going to be on October 12th. If you appreciate the forums that we've done so far, there is an ad for supportmylocalnews.com. That's a website that'll take you to support options where you can financially support a Tucker Observer and Decaturish. Free news is not free. The forums that we provide, the opportunities that we provide to keep people informed do cost money. It costs money to send people to city council meetings, to keep an eye on what our government's doing. So if that matters to you, if local news matters to you, if being informed matters to you, please do us a favor. Visit supportmylocalnews.com and become a paying supporter for as little as $3 a month, or make a one-time donation to kind of help keep this thing going so we can continue to provide these forums. Now, with that out of the way, each candidate is going to have 3 minutes to make an opening statement, and then we're going to follow up with a list of questions, and they'll get 3 minutes to respond to each of those. If you have a question and you are watching us right now, and you're taking time out of your Saturday to join us, thank you for doing that, by the way. Create yourself a Twitch account, give us a follow on Twitch, and drop a comment with your question in our comment section, and I'll be happy to ask that of the candidates, and they will be happy to answer them. So with that, let's begin. Alexis, we're going to start with you. You're going to have 3 minutes to make an opening statement.
Thank you. Well, I'm really excited to be here today. I really appreciate Decaturish and Tucker Observer for investing in our local elections and making sure that citizens are informed. I think that's really important. Um, I'm a mom and a nonprofit leader, and I'm running to represent the inclusive values of our community. I have over 2 decades of economic development and community development experience where I've been focusing on amplifying the voices of the unheard and marginalized. I have an educational background in urban planning with a focus on stakeholder engagement, and it's really important to me that we bring all voices in our community to the table to help make decisions. We chose to move to Tucker with our family 8 years ago because of the diversity of this community. I've seen the breadth of that as a board member of Networks Cooperative Ministry, as a room mom at Livesey Elementary, where 2 of my children are. And, as I've been cheering on my kids on the sidelines in the numerous community sports programs that they've participated in, including 5 years with Tucker Football League at Fitzgerald Field. I am running because I really want to make sure that those values of our community of diversity and inclusion are represented on City Council. And as we look to the future and the next comprehensive plan, we really need to make sure at this critical juncture that we are bringing all parts of our community, all citizens to that point to make sure that this is a place where everybody who lives here and works here can thrive.
Thank you. Neil Stubblefield, 3 minutes to make your opening statement.
Well, I would echo the thanks to you, Dan, and Decaturish and Tucker Observer for setting up this forum. I'm Neil Stubblefield, and I've lived in Tucker for 31 years. I was born and raised in East Tennessee and came to Atlanta in the mid-1970s to attend Georgia Tech, graduated there with a mechanical engineering degree. And I've just completed a 42-year career as a professional consulting engineer, 32 years of that in the environmental field, helping to build water, wastewater, and other water infrastructure for cities and counties and water authorities and industry. I was a vice president at Jordan, Jones and Golding before we sold that company. And as I indicated, I just completed my career. I retired at the end of 2020. I'm an elder at North Lake Church of Christ, where we've worshiped here in Tucker for 35 years, and I head up our adult spiritual development. Also headed up our building program, not once but twice. My wife Joanne and I just celebrated 40 years of marriage back in July. She's president of Hyatt and Stubblefield, which is a law firm here in Tucker. We've got 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren, and one of our children is also a Georgia Tech grad. My involvement in Tucker came back in, really the whole time we've lived here, but in the Tucker Cityhood Initiative back in 2014 when Ann Lerner asked me to get involved. And I testified before legislators, canvassed neighborhoods, monitored our historic vote in November of 2015. Then when the city was stood up in 2016, I reviewed proposals from various consultants on how to operate the city. For that, I was awarded an appointment by the mayor to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I've been on that since its inception, serving both as chair and currently as vice chair. Mayor Almond also appointed me to be the city's representative for infrastructure and development to the county's 2070 wastewater master plan. So I serve on that task force as well. So my focus on serving Tucker is really in 2 areas. First of all, I think we need to do what we've committed to do through our charter, those 3 services that are provided by the charter: Parks and Rec, Planning and Zoning, Permitting and Code Enforcement. We need to do that at our very best level, deliver a high level of service to taxpayers and to businesses. The second thing is we need to encourage smart growth. Our population here in Tucker has grown significantly, about 38% since the 2010 census. And so we need to be planning for the additional folks who are coming our way. We've got a population of over 37,000. And finally, to create a nurturing atmosphere for everybody who makes their homes and livelihoods in Tucker, inclusion and participation in service. Thanks.
Thank you. The first question is going to go to you, Mr. Stubblefield, and then we'll take it over to Alexis. This election has brought out many different candidates with a diverse range of perspectives. There are people of color running this year, there are members of the LGBTQ community running this year, and there are single parents that are running this year. What does that say to you about the future of Tucker? 3 minutes.
I think that says that Tucker has a bright future because we've got so many folks from so many different walks of life who are engaging in the public process. One of the things that I noted about Tucker is we've got a great spirit of volunteerism in this city. We have over 30 volunteer organizations that I counted, and I'm sure there are many more that I didn't underscore. But there's just a place for everybody who wants to plug in this community. And I think that's great to hear that so many people are coming to Tucker and so many people are actually getting involved in things, not just at the city level, but at a community level. And I think community service is one of those places where people have an opportunity to start, and as their field of friends and the things that they get to do in the community, I think that's recognized. It gives them an opportunity to seek higher opportunities by serving in a public way, such as Alexis and I are choosing to do here with City Council.
Thank you. Alexis, same question to you. This election has brought out many different candidates with a diverse range of perspectives. There are people of color running this year, there are members of the LGBTQ community running this year, and there are single parents running this year. What does that say to you about the future of Tucker? 3 minutes.
Well, as a mom, I think a lot about what the next 20 and 30 years are going to hold for my kids. And I think that it says that, yes, we have a strong, diverse community. And I'm so glad that all these voices are coming up. We've had kind of not a lot of discussion and dialogue because we've had uncontested races kind of historically. And so I think it's really good and a healthy time for us as a community to be talking about what types of leadership that we're looking for, how we can make sure that people feel represented by their city leadership. I think that is one thing that, again, the diversity of this race shows, is that we need to make sure that we're doing a better job really actively seeking out voices that don't maybe match up with our sort of backgrounds or perspectives, and making sure that those are included equally to folks, whether you've lived here for 30 or 40 years or you've lived here for 2 or 3 years. Your voice is as equally important in terms of the future of our community. One of my passions is how we can increase citizen engagement through something like a citizen advisory board, several citizen advisory boards, making sure that we're reaching out to all of those. So I'm looking forward to really getting the chance to hear all these ideas and see how we can shape our community for the next 20 to 30 years.
Thank you. Alexis, we'll start with the next question with you. And this question is actually from one of our Twitch viewers. The viewer asks, Tucker's comprehensive plan is an opportunity to demonstrate measures and progress towards success in Tucker. What additional measures of success will you add to the plan? 3 minutes.
So I love this question because, as I said, I am an urban planner by training. And so planning really excites me, but I also am a research and data person. And one of the things that I think is really important when you have a plan is that you look towards how we can evaluate the success of that plan. And so right now, we have sort of some metrics that are, did we do it or not? What's the timetable? But I really want to see us add in very intentional, clear-cut measures that say, how much of this have we done, which is what we've sort of been doing, but also how well have we been doing it? And is anyone better off as a result of the work that we're doing? I think that having a continuous improvement process is really, really important, particularly because we are going to continue to do these plans. We're required to by the state. We should be doing them. And I think there's an opportunity to look at, kind of to what I was saying about a 30-year plan. I would love to have us have a vision of Tucker that we are basing our comprehensive plans off. So what do we want to be as a community in 30 years? What are the values that we see and want to make sure that our comprehensive plans are aligned with as we create those each time? That's going to have an influence, obviously, on our zoning and on our code enforcement and what kinds of services we may want to add as a city. And so I think it's very, very important that I'd love to see us do an interactive dashboard on the city website. So not just like 10 different PDFs about different plans and where they are, but something that really lets the community, where are we in terms of not just progress, but how well are we doing it? What can we change? How can we get better? It doesn't have to be a negative thing to say we haven't done something so well. What can we learn from that? I'd love to see specifically an equity assessment happen across all of our city services to make sure that we are getting our inclusive values out and making sure that we're living into those things, that nobody in the community is being discriminated against across our services. So I think that's a really important metric that we should add in. I also would like to see us think about for some of the things that have come up that leadership has said are not a part of our charter. I'd really like to look at how do we hear those things and think about how we can incorporate them and respond to them, even if we can't directly do something or we don't feel that we can. How can we make sure we're listening and hearing and gathering that? So public health would be a good example of that, to make sure that we know what's happening with our community and are taking action where possible.
Thank you. Neil, same question to you. Tucker's comprehensive plan is an opportunity to demonstrate measures and progress towards success in Tucker. What additional measures of success would you add to the plan? 3 minutes.
Well, so our initial comprehensive plan, which of course is Alexis has alluded to, was required by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. They're required of all cities of a certain size, and we also have to update those every 5 years. That doesn't mean that things don't happen in between. I remember when we first put together the comp plan, it really took about a year, and there was a lot of public input. There was in-person meetings at various places around downtown. There was online contributions, multiple drafts of those plans, and then a public hearing process as these plans were adopted by the mayor and council. And of course, the plan itself is multifaceted. You've got the land use plan, you've got the transportation master plan, the trails master plan, parks and rec. We even added some other plans that are sort of, I'll say, non-standard, like our downtown grid plan, where we could really look at opportunities to enliven and make more vibrant the downtown area. So it's not that we have to wait 5 years. We can do this continuously, continuous improvement, if you will. As far as what are the measures of success? Well, when we actually execute on the plan, I think that indicates success. And I think that one of the things that we need to think about, and I'm glad Alexis brought this up, is this is often revealing about services that the city might want to consider going forward, because right now we have 3 core services with some wraparound business support. And also a little bit of tourism. We do have a charter review committee that is, again, required to look at our charter every 3 years. They did that a few years ago and came up with some suggestions. Some of those things we could achieve by home rule, other things we had to take back through our legislative delegation down at the Capitol. But, to that point, I think it provides an opportunity for us to reassess what is our services and what is our service delivery. That's the other component of these plans, is we have to file a service delivery plan. I believe our next official filing on that is 2026.
Thank you, Neil. We have another question from a viewer, so I'm going to read that, and we're going to start with you, Neil.
Yes.
The viewer says, I am a member of the LGBT community in Tucker, a spouse and a mother of 2 amazing kids. Tell me what you will do to make the city more inclusive, family-focused, and foster utilization of our diversity for the good of Tucker. 3 minutes.
Well, I would say that, first of all, Tucker is a very welcoming community. I've seen it change tremendously, both in actual size, but the variety of people who have come to Tucker over the last 30 years. I've never felt that it was unwelcoming, and I hope people who come to Tucker now don't feel it's unwelcoming. One of the things that I really like that the Tucker Open Door group is doing is they have a sticker program that allows businesses and other organizations to indicate their support for an inclusive community. And it goes beyond mere virtue signaling, in my opinion. To me, it says, hey, we're all in as a business or an organization. You're welcome. We have a contract, if you will, with our employees and the people within our organization, but we also have expectations of customers where we have public facing organizations. We have expectations of our clients and suppliers, and that everybody be treated fairly and equally. So I think that's something that as a city, we ought to encourage and promote that. And I think, I can point out, for example, at our church, we have a very inclusive congregation. We have people from all walks of life, including gender and family situations. And it just makes for a very wonderful and diverse atmosphere. We don't always agree on everything, but we love each other. And I think that's what's important.
Thank you. Alexis, same question to you. The viewer says, I am a member of the LGBT community in Tucker, a spouse and a mother of 2 amazing kids. Tell me what you will do to make our city more inclusive, family-focused, and foster utilization of our diversity for the good of Tucker. 3 minutes.
I think it's really, really important that all of our neighbors feel that this is a welcoming place. I'm not sure that they do right now. I think, one of the things that I've seen is that we do have these wonderful different types of families. My kids love, everybody that they get to play with, and that's a big, really important part of our community. But I think that the lack of action on the non-discrimination ordinance really shows how our leadership in our community is afraid to have that conversation. In 2021, I think it's past time that we make a clear statement that discrimination does not have a place in our community. So we need to start there. We shouldn't put the onus entirely on the businesses. We should make sure that, again, we are looking at our whole community and how we come together, and what are the structures that we can put in place, and what are the ways that we can lead by example in terms of making sure that people feel that if they are discriminated against, that there is a place for them to go and a course of action for them to take. And I think that not just between things like employment, but also in terms of housing and in terms of just how do we as a city make sure that we're following the kinds of best practices and ethical things that are important to make sure that everybody is treated equally and fairly. I do think it is a starting point. I would love to see us do some things that bring more people to the table in terms of things like what kinds of festivals could we have that bring more families to the table? What kinds of things in our marketing and communications can we make sure that we are, when we are telling the story of Tucker, that we are representing in images and in stories all of those types of families. So let's make sure that we have LGBTQ families represented. Let's make sure that we have Black families represented. Let's make sure we have Latinx families represented. So we have a really comprehensive picture of the diversity of our community. I think it is concerning, and that's one of the reasons why I do want to have this equity assessment, that I don't always see representation across the board in all of our programming. And so I want to make sure that the things that my children are experiencing at school are also the things that our whole community has a chance to experience.
Thank you. Alexis, we'll start the next question with you. What are your goals in the next 4 years for these three city services? And the services are zoning, code enforcement, and parks. And I'm going to read that again. Zoning, code enforcement, and parks. 3 minutes.
So I think going back to what I had mentioned around a 30-year vision, I really feel strongly that we need a long-term vision for our community that we can make decisions off of in terms of both providing what kinds of service are we providing, but also the quality and how well are we doing it. I would really like to see, so off of that and off of our comprehensive plans is where zoning comes in, right? So what kinds of housing do we want? What kinds of businesses do we want? What are the densities that we want to see? How do we make sure that all of these pieces are connected to a greater vision so that we're not changing, year after year, the direction that we're headed? One of the things that I would really think is really important is a housing development strategy. So looking at zoning, when we talk about what kind of community that we want to be as Tucker, we need to make sure that across the life cycle, we have housing that fits everybody's needs. I hear over and over again from people who've lived here about as long as I have, maybe a little bit less, that if they tried to move to Tucker today, they couldn't be able to do it. And so one of the things that can be a challenge when you have people who have lived here for a really long time, which is great, is that they don't always experience what's happening in the housing market because they've been a homeowner for so long. They don't know what younger families are experiencing. And I think that that's really important for us to be creative in terms of how we zone and what kinds of ordinances we can create. So I think that applies to both. We've had some conversations about homelessness and what kinds of permanent supportive housing needs could be met. We've talked about what kinds of first-time home buyer options could there be, and right now there's just not a lot of that consistency across our market. So I want to make sure that we know what kinds of housing we want to have and what kinds of densities we want to have, and then what's the way that we're going to make sure that we have those things. In terms of code enforcement, I have some concerns. Historically, kind of systemically, code enforcement can be and has been used, not necessarily in Tucker, but as a tool for oppression. To make and can have some racist undertones. So we want to make sure that we're looking at what the priorities for code enforcement are so that those things are being done equitably across our community and that there aren't populations that are targeted, whether unintentionally or not. We want to make sure we can review those processes. I would love us to think about an ombudsman or mediator that if somebody receives a fine or a ticket before they have to go all the way, to court and try to figure that out and resolve that we have somebody that can help mediate that process. I think it's really, really important that we make sure that we're not increasing the city's budget on the backs of homeowners only. And then finally with parks, I think, we really need to have more connectivity between, the great work that's already been done in our parks, but making sure that we have those things connected and that they're thriving forever.
Thank you. Neil, same question to you. What are your goals in the next 4 years for three city services? Zoning, code enforcement, and parks. And I'm going to read those again. It's zoning, code enforcement, and parks. 3 minutes.
I'll start with the last one first, and that's parks. I think the Parks and Recreation was one of the things that the voters consistently before our referendum told us we really want green spaces. We want the parks that we're getting from DeKalb County managed better. And so we've had a master plan done that has suggested all sorts of improvements there. And I think we followed through on that plan. Of course, the big rub is going to be, of course, how do you fund those improvements? So I think we need to look at some private-public partnerships in that regard, maybe some sponsorships. You may have a question down the line about Fitzgerald Field, where I think this fits in as well. I think there's still opportunities, even though Tucker's pretty well built out, to acquire some more green space. I think the folks down in District 2, for example, would say that they're a little bit underserved. And I think we need to actively look for some additional green space for those folks. As far as code enforcement goes, I think Alexis is on point with that. We need to be a little more consistent. I think the bigger problem that I notice is if a code enforcer goes into a neighborhood and it all generally looks a certain way, they're picking out the exceptions, which means you could have a really nice looking neighborhood and one that's not so nice, and you sort of grade down. So I think we need to have a little more standardization from that standpoint. The other thing is, code enforcement is largely a public safety and health sort of issue. And I think we need to help people understand that. We're just not getting after you because you've got a couch out in your front yard or a refrigerator in your driveway, something like that. The other thing I would just say very briefly about that is the Tucker Civic Association, through their Lifelong Community Committee, is actually putting together a group of volunteers that if somebody gets cited, let's say an elderly person gets cited about something on their property, they're going to have a whole group of volunteers that can come out, whether it's cutting grass, making repairs, whatever, to help them alleviate that problem. So I think that's a very worthwhile volunteer effort. And then finally, zoning, densification in a number of areas is needed so that we can continue to enjoy what I think is still some of the best real estate opportunities in the county. I know we look around, we see the $500,000, $700,000 houses going up. And to Alexis's point, people in my age demographic, when we decide to downsize, the type of house that we gravitate to is often the one that first-time home buyers are going to, and that's the ranch house. So we need to convince some developers to build a different product.
Thank you. Neil, we'll start this question with you. What is your position on implementing a non-discrimination ordinance in the city of Tucker? 3 minutes.
Well, first of all, I'll say that in the last month, I reached out to the proponents of that ordinance, the draft ordinance, and I know all three of them. They've served admirably on our appointed boards. I support non-discrimination laws generally and the desire to eliminate unlawful discrimination. But the proponents of the proposed ordinance, they have a laudable goal. However, I don't think they understand the scope of the existing laws that are in place that prohibit discrimination, the breadth of the ordinance that has been proposed, or sort of the unintended consequences it would have if it's adopted. There's already over a dozen statutes at the federal and state level that address discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations, along with a pretty large body of regulations and decades of case law that interpret and apply those laws. So one or more of them cover virtually every class of discrimination that's named in this proposed ordinance. And each of these laws already provide recourse to those whose rights have been violated in the review process. So this proposed ordinance, it would sort of supplant that vast body of law with only 5 pages of pretty broad text without the logical carve-outs provided under federal and state law for employers with fewer than 15 employees, or such things as senior housing and child safety. Under the proposed ordinance, for example, parents seeking to employ a babysitter for their young child, they couldn't choose the gender of that person that won't care for their child or the language they want spoken. A business such as a bar, a bed and breakfast, or spa can restrict their services to adults only or require children to be accompanied by an adult when on their premises. And you can think about what's going on over at Lenox Square now with their requirement. And then senior housing facilities currently operating in the city, they would be illegal because they discriminate on the basis of age and familial status. So, there's a substantial number of businesses that are licensed in Tucker that have 15 or fewer employers and employees. In fact, that's about 90% of them. We have a little over 3,000 businesses in Tucker. 2,800 of them I have employees of employment of less than 15 persons, and they don't have the resources to advise them on all the nuances of what may or may not constitute or be perceived by others to constitute discrimination. So the proposed ordinance required the city employee staff to field complaints, make determinations, impose fines. And I don't think the proposed ordinance as currently drafted is in the best interest of the city of Tucker or its residents. I'd be willing to consider one that doesn't duplicate existing federal and state laws, preserves these logical exemptions, and doesn't create an unnecessary burden on the city of Tucker or its taxpayers, or imposes liability on the city.
Thank you. Alexis, same question to you. What is your position on implementing a non-discrimination ordinance in the city of Tucker? 3 minutes.
So as I stated, I am an enthusiastic supporter of the non-discrimination ordinance. I think what is really unfortunate is that we had a group of very smart, passionate citizens put this together based on what is standard practice in surrounding cities, and ask the city council to discuss it. And it has sat on a shelf for 2 years. So we haven't even been able, as a leadership, like our leadership in our community has not actually discussed some of the potential concerns that may be out there. But when it comes down to it, the ordinance is around protecting LGBTQ families and individuals. And that's something that isn't necessarily covered by federal and state laws as comprehensively as it should be. It also is something that needs to happen in a local community, because we all know that where you should be able to get your grievances addressed is with your local community is really important. We can't have everybody just go to federal court if they have a problem. The ordinance sets out a really straightforward process for how to handle concerns that citizens may have. I don't think that it's an undue burden, but I also would like to just have that discussion. We haven't seen that in the surrounding communities that have adopted this non-discrimination ordinance. And I think that there's often a fear of talking about how we can protect, again, LGBTQ communities. So I think it's really, really important that these are our neighbors that have brought this and said, we don't feel protected. It's also the goal is not to wait until discrimination happens, right? We want to make sure that we are being proactive and saying that we do not accept discrimination in this community. I think we saw this happen in Georgia with the hate crimes law. When Ahmaud Arbery was killed, we did not have legislation at the state that protected people who are being discriminated and killed because of their racial background. We had to go after the fact and do that. That's not acceptable. We need to be leading, not following. And we've missed that opportunity now, but we have lots of case studies to look at from right around our neighboring cities to be able to do this. So I think it's really, really important that we bring it to the table and discuss it. We shouldn't be dismissive of citizen concerns and say that and not be willing to have a conversation about it.
Thank you. Alexis, we'll start the next question with you. The question is, Tucker has a history of a strong business community that predates becoming a city. How will you balance the interests of CIDs, residents, business owners, and property owners when it comes to making good policy for the city of Tucker? 3 minutes.
So, one of the things that I love about our community is the spirit of volunteerism. And Neil kind of talked about that as well, right? All of the civic groups that we have. One of the opportunities that we have as a city, though, is to help capitalize on that spirit of volunteerism. That, before we were a city, we had to rely solely on those groups to be able to make a difference and make a change. I think that we have an opportunity to be more intentional and forward thinking about how we bring those groups together. I have 5 years of experience working at a chamber of commerce in community and economic development, and see the value of those public-private partnerships in helping grow our communities. Just like I would like to have citizen advisory boards for property owners and residents, I'd like to do that same thing with business owners. I think it's really important that we make sure that we're communicating with our business community on a regular basis, and not just in one-on-one conversations, but in a formal way of engaging. I'd love to see us have quarterly business roundtables that have people talk kind of about the challenges that they're seeing. I'd love for us to think about what that way of capitalizing on some of our entrepreneurial spirit is, in terms of how can we bring more different types of businesses here? How can we make sure, kind of to the measures of success, that we are making this a business friendly environment? But also, I think it's our industry is a really important revenue stream for our community. And so we need to make sure that we're taking care of the people who live here, while we're also trying to attract new businesses and making sure that that's something that we do. I think we definitely need to continue to leverage the partnerships that we already have with our community improvement districts. But again, I'd like us to see kind of a more formal structure and feel less like we're relying on the volunteer community, and how we can help facilitate and convene that into something maybe a little bit more professional, that brings in additional voices in a very intentional way.
Thank you. Neil, same question for you. Tucker has a history of a strong business community that predates becoming a city. How will you balance the interests of CIDs, residents, businesses, and property owners when it comes to making good policy for Tucker? 3 minutes.
So I've talked about the Emery Morseberger with the Tucker Cement CID, and Matthew Lee of North Lake Tucker about these issues. And as I stated before, the small business generation, particularly in Tucker, represents about 90% of our overall business activity. The businesses altogether in Tucker in the last year generated over $4.5 billion in gross receipts. That's a pretty huge number. So Alexis already mentioned, they pay a lot of the freight in Tucker for the services that we all get to enjoy. So we need to encourage them. We need to give them help. We need to look at opportunities for redevelopment. I mentioned earlier the Lawrenceville Highway Corridor in District 2. What if we could take some of these extended stay motels and hotels and do some things to redevelop those facilities, either for housing, for homeless and transient populations, or just redevelop them for housing that's more affordable to people in our community? I think there's some real opportunities there. We've got 2 boards in particular that are vested with helping to shape the business environment. Our Planning Commission, through their abilities with setting up zoning ordinances that, of course, have to ultimately be approved by mayor and council, and then the ZBA, on which I sit, where we often have to deal with issues between residential interests and business interests. We try to follow the plan, follow the ordinances that we're all expected to follow in making those decisions. And then, we need to balance the concerns of residential property owners. Most all of us want to be able to sell our property for a little more than we paid for it when we first moved here. And I think we need to look at ways that get more people into the housing market. Again, some areas, particularly along Lawrenceville Highway, are, I think, ripe for some redevelopment along the residential lines, and we really need to make a focused effort on that. The final thing I'll say about the businesses is there's a real concern about law enforcement and having good law enforcement resources available to help them. We know that the area, for example, around Mountain Industrial Boulevard and Highway 78 is a real hotbed for a lot of drug, prostitution, and other illegal activities. So they're very concerned about the resources that are available to help them combat that so that they can have thriving operations.
Thank you. Neil, the next question, we will start with you. What needs to happen before Tucker can take over stormwater and roads from DeKalb County? It's been a year since it was proposed at the City Council. 3 minutes.
So, first of all, I would say that on the public works side, that DeKalb County does a really good job with emergency work when they're called out to deal with, sudden big oops. They do that. It's the day to day kind of long list of things that need to get accomplished. Particularly with our stormwater system and our water that they're not as good at, and we need to have some better accountability. I know that a number of the city council people meet regularly with Zach Williams, who's the chief operating officer of the county on this. We also need to think about the fact that we are creating a lot of new infrastructure for the county to have to deal with when you look at these developments and redevelopment projects. So we may naturally have to take a greater role on that. I think when we take on public works, we can do it initially with a lot of contract operations. This is how it's done in other cities that I've worked with. Storm drainage, I think if you take on roads, you just naturally have to take that on. It's intertwined with it. A big part of that, of course, is the municipal separate storm sewer system permitting, or the MS4, and that's, of course, handled by the county now. The county, to their credit, is doing a major stormwater master plan update, and hopefully we'll get out of that a better idea of cost of service, because we know that DeKalb has not raised their stormwater fee since about 2004, so it's woefully behind. We need to continue to do what we're doing well with the SPLOST program, which is bringing about $33 million to Tucker in our road surfacing, repair, and sidewalk program. But that also supplies some money that we can use in our parks program. I guess the bottom line is all of this is going to require a referendum, and we got to look hard at it because it's a big investment, just like when you start talking about police and law enforcement. So these services will require a referendum of the people to support or reject it.
Thank you. Alexis, same question to you. What needs to happen before the city of Tucker can take over stormwater and roads from DeKalb County? It has been a year since it was proposed at City Council. 3 minutes.
So I am not certain that the right answer is absolutely to take over large services. We are a small community. We currently utilize a contractor for a lot of our staffing. So I think that in order to decide what services we may or may not want to take on, we need to have a really robust funding and staffing strategy to make sure that that's something that we can support. In the meantime, I think that we have an opportunity to do things like utilize our citizen responder role more effectively. So a lot of folks that I talk to don't even realize that we have a person who is dedicated to hear the concerns from our community related to things like roads challenges, stormwater, utility bills, poles down. And I think we really could look at our intergovernmental agreements and potentially come up with a professional position that the citizen responder can share those concerns back up to, and they're the person who's going, a government affairs type position that would be going and having these conversations very intentionally and on a consistent basis. I think taking the whole picture instead of a one by one issue that one citizen is maybe easy to dismiss, but if we can capitalize on the fact that we are a whole city and bring in, say, hey, we have this number of collapsed storm drains, we have this many potholes that need to be addressed, and make it more efficient and effective for DeKalb County to be able to respond to that, to be able to prioritize it in a way that saves us more money because they're not doing it on a one-on-one basis, but it's an actual targeted project that they can work on. I think it's something that's really important. But with all of our services, I'm not comfortable at this point saying that we should take on anything else until we really understand how we are going to strategically fund our city over the next 20 to 30 years and what kinds of ways we can support those types of services effectively as a community.
Thank you. Alexis, we'll start the next question with you. Do you think Tucker should have its own police department? And if so, how will the city pay for it? 3 minutes.
So at this time, I don't. Again, kind of to my previous answer, I think we need to be really careful about the things that we think that as a 37,000, people resident city, what we can take on and what the economy of scale is for that. We have a great relationship with the Tucker precinct of DeKalb County PD here in Tucker, and I think they do an excellent job. I think we can do even more to advocate for our residents' concerns, for our business owners' concerns with that department. I think that there are a lot of opportunities that having access to that larger scale programming can help us. So to me, the big issue is how can we as city government advocate for our citizens and for our community more effectively with these other entities.
Thank you. Neil, same question to you. Do you think Tucker should have its own police department? And if so, how will the city pay for it? 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think Alexis and I are on the same wavelength here. I don't think that's yet something we need to do. When this intergovernmental agreement was inked with DeKalb in 2018, it was really sort of a one of a kind, first time anybody had thought about combining precincts. And so we've got, sort of a single source responsibility. The issue, and I've talked with Major Medlin, who's the commander over there, is really staff retention. And of course, this is affecting police departments all over the country as people are not joining police departments, they're not staying. And so we really need to help them with recruiting and retention. And I know CEO Thurman recently said that they were going to use some of the county's American Rescue Plan dollars to pay out retention bonuses to officers. I think that's something we should think about here in Tucker, specifically with the police that serve us. It's unfortunate, but he was telling me the other day, this is Major Medlin again, that they only had 9 recruits that graduated from the police academy in DeKalb County. And DeKalb County is one of the few that actually has a police academy. But that normally would be a number around 25 or 30 people that would be coming through at this time. I think there's something that also needs to be thought about, and that's trying to get more eyes on the ground via technology. Connect Our Neighborhood watches, associated residential and business private cameras to the FirstNet system that AT&T is building out for DeKalb County. I think that'll help our police immensely. This doesn't mean that everybody's little Ring doorbell cameras go be on it, but we could have certain designated cameras around town. We've obviously initiated, because of traffic instances, a traffic speed monitoring program where they have movable digital signs. We've got one out here on Midvale Avenue, or Midvale Road rather, that's reminding us when we're exceeding the speed limit. And I think this will give us a lot of data back to help us know better how to deploy our traffic enforcement. But I think the big thing that, again, we have to think about is if we went this step, we probably would still have to get services from DeKalb County. They've got the SWAT units, the helicopters, the drug interdiction, all of those things. So there would still be a relationship there. And of course, a police department would, again, just like with Public Works, require a referendum of the people.
Thank you. Neil, we have one more question, I think, and then we're going to move into closing statements. We're going to start the question with you. What is your opinion of Tucker's current urban camping ordinance? And if you were elected, what is your plan to address the problem of homelessness in the city of Tucker? 3 minutes.
Well, I talked to Major Medlin about the urban camping ordinance, and he said that they really haven't had to deploy that yet. There was a program early on that the state initiated as a result of that tragic fire down on I-85 a few years ago to clear out um, homeless camps that are under I-285 and under US 78. And they've been acting on that, but he said they really haven't had to utilize the urban camping ordinance. And of course, it's basically a tool for the police to offer aid to folks who are in these situations. I spent some time talking to Malvia Richards, who's also a Tucker resident and has been the housing program director in DeKalb County for the last 15 years, serving the homeless. And one of the things that she's very honest about is we really need to have some additional shelter resources in the county. We don't have a centralized shelter. There are multiple small private shelters. And so they're having to reserve, bed space at some of the larger ones in the city of Atlanta. So there is a need for that. The question is always, where do you put something like that? Where do you put it in such a way that it's not obvious that that's what it is? And also, how does that get managed? And again, I think back to that opportunity at these intersections like at Lawrenceville Highway and 285 and Mountain Industrial at 78 as being maybe some opportunities to look at something like that. We participate with networks where Alexa serves on the board. Our church has a clothing closet that we operate several Wednesdays of each month. By the way, bring your winter goods over. We're ready to change out clothes for the season. But I think we need to continue to encourage organizations like Networks and the Net. Networks recently was granted a nearly $1.3 million grant through the American Rescue Plan to administer during the coming year to deal with rent, maintenance, and some of the other issues that are brought on by people who maybe all of a sudden find themselves homeless or in dire straits. And so we're really appreciative of those organizations. And I'm glad the city is partnering with professional groups like that to do that.
Thank you. Alexis, same question to you. What is your opinion of Tucker's current urban camping ordinance? And if you are elected, what is your plan to address the problem of homelessness in the city of Tucker? 3 minutes.
So the reason I'm running for city council is because I started paying attention when the city chose to pass the urban camping ordinance, even though over 50 residents showed up at a city council meeting to say they didn't agree with it. As someone who has worked in the nonprofit space specifically around poverty alleviation for decades, I think that it was a misguided decision that put the cart before the horse, if you will. The ordinance does three things. It says that the police have to issue a verbal warning, then a written warning with offer of services, and then if the person chooses to stay on public property, then they will be jailed. There is not a plan for what happens to that person's belongings when they are jailed. So when this happened, again, the community turned out and said, hey, we need a longer term discussion about how we want to provide services to our community and what is the actual scope of the homelessness issue in our community. We don't have really strong data on that. A really robust plan was put together very, very quickly, too quickly, because we were limited by city council and how fast we had to come together and present something. That said, how can the city be a convener? If you're not willing, if the city isn't willing or unable to, because of the charter, to provide direct social services, the city can function as a leadership role to convene social services to say, hey, what it does a comprehensive plan for addressing homelessness and poverty look like in our community? Who are the social service providers that we can tap into? How can we work better with DeKalb County for their social services? I actually did this when I was on the chamber, when I worked for the Waco Chamber of Commerce, where the city brought together a robust, diverse task force, essentially, to spend time thinking about what were the needs in terms of making our community better. And then that spun off a nonprofit that the city doesn't have any control over or manage that allows that organization to think about the poverty issues in that community. That's something that we could have done. Right now, there are not enough social services. And so to me, it's paying lip service to say that you have to offer social services to someone who is homeless before you can arrest them. It was actually stated in that city council meeting that we just don't want them here. And that really hurts me because even though people are unhoused, they're still a part of our community. And so one of the things that we need to do is figure out, again, how all voices of our community can be brought together to look at what are the opportunities. I think that's something like my housing development strategy, where we can really look at what kinds of zoning could help make those things happen. Because one of the things that's going to happen is if somebody does want to provide permanent supportive housing or they want to provide some kind of shelter as it stands, you're going to have a not in my backyard problem. And so we need to make sure that we're getting ahead of that to make sure that there's a place for everybody.
Thank you. And with that, that is our last question. I'm going to give each candidate 3 minutes to make a closing statement, and we're going to start with Neil Stubblefield. Neil, you have 3 minutes.
Well, thanks again, Dan, for hosting this. Really appreciate Decaturish and Tucker Observer for the broadcast of this. I really have to acknowledge the great work by Michelle Pincava, both in inspiring the Cityhood initiative nearly 10 years and being a wonderful council person for our first 6 years out of the starting gate, and really her personal support for my candidacy as well. I've attended many of the nearly 130 city council meetings that have been held over the last 5.5 years, as well as all 30 of the zoning board of appeals meetings that we've had since 2016. I know there's a lot of work that happens beyond these public facing meetings, and I have the latitude to manage my time and roll up my sleeves even more to serve all of Tucker. I'm asking for your vote in District 3 on November 2nd, reminding everyone that they can vote early here in Tucker at Reed Cofer Library. By the way, our mayor beseeched the voting commission here in DeKalb County to add that when the city is paying for that as an early voting location. And you can do that from October the 12th through October the 29th. And that includes 2 Saturdays, the 16th and the 23rd for early voting. You can read more about me and my platform at neilstubblefield.com and its associated Facebook page, Neil Stubblefield for Tucker. And I appreciate your vote on November 2nd.
Thank you, Neil. Alexis Weaver, 3 minutes for a closing statement.
Well, I've really enjoyed getting to share kind of the vision that I have for feeling like myself and my neighbors are represented in the community. I want to echo that. I think turnout is really important. So I hear over and over again how much people don't feel that their voices are being represented in decision making right now. And one of the reasons for that is we haven't had high percentages of people who are registered to vote actually vote in cityhood in city elections since cityhood. So I really want to encourage folks to make sure that that your registration is current, that you haven't been taken off the rolls, and make sure you have a plan to vote. I believe that this community is something that can be such a robust, amazing place for everyone who lives here. And I want to make sure that the decisions that are made keep that in mind, that it's not for a few people, but it's for everyone in our community, that we leverage the economic growth that's happening, that we create ways to very intentionally and proactively include citizens in that decision-making process to make sure that we all feel like we have a voice, whether you have hours and hours to attend every single meeting or every single opportunity that's out there, or you're a busy mom who just wants to see the best for their kids. Your voice is equally important, and we want to make sure that we're finding it and listening to it. So you can find out more about me and my platform at alexis4tucker.com, alexis4tucker.com, or my Facebook page is Alexis Weaver for Tucker City Council at Alexis4Tucker. I really hope that our community turns out, because that's what's going to make it more successful, is when we have more of our voices included.
Thank you, Alexis, and thank you both for joining us. I want to thank you both in particular for your interest in public service. Local government is the most important government that we have. It's the government that's closest to us. It's the building block of the wonderful democracy that we all appreciate and enjoy. And it doesn't work without good candidates that are willing to step up and sacrifice their time. And it also doesn't work without engaged voters. So I want to thank the people who took time out of their Saturday to get to know these candidates, to learn more about them, to help themselves make an informed decision. If you missed the forum today, not to worry. We're going to put this on our YouTube channel, the Decaturish YouTube channel, and it'll be available for later viewing. We're going to write a story about it as well and include this video and all the videos of our forums in that story. In fact, the District 3 Post 1 forum is the last election forum we're going to have in Tucker. So bravo to every candidate that showed up and made time to do this. I'm so glad we were able to complete this process before voting starts on October 12th. The election, of course, is November 2nd. If you want any of our coverage related to Tucker, Clarkston, and Stone Mountain, you need to visit Tucker Observer Votes. You're going to find all the forums there. You're going to find all the Q&As, all the elections coverage there. We're going to put out a special e-edition on October 1 that is going to be a voter's guide that's going to have all of the cities that we're covering. It's going to be Avondale, Atlanta, Stone Mountain, Clarkston, Decatur, Tucker, All of that, all those Q&As are going to be in that e-edition. Our next forum is going to be the Avondale Estates City Commission Forum. It's going to be right here on Twitch. It's going to be Monday, September 20th at 6 p.m. If you appreciate what we do, if you appreciate the opportunities that we're providing you to hear from these candidates, if you appreciate having local news, the kind of news that only we're giving you, the kind of news that other media outlets are too understaffed or too differently prioritized to cover, go ahead and visit supportmylocalnews.com. It's this little ad right here. It's going to give you options to support Tucker Observer and Decaturish. You can make a one-time contribution. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. That support is what helps us get reporters out to meetings to watch what our government's doing. It helps provide a hosting service for our website. It helps provide opportunities to hear candidates like these in your local elections, opportunities you're not going to find anywhere else. So if that matters to you, if what we do is important to you, if you care about local news, please go and visit supportmylocalnews.com and become a paying supporter of Decaturish and Tucker Observer today. That is all of our forums for today. We will see you on Monday at 6 p.m. Until then, everybody have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. Oh, and get your vaccine if you haven't gotten your vaccine, and wear your mask. Stay safe. Bye-bye, everybody.